Well, this is going to be a little different today. I'm excited because Marie and I have been spending the last few days in Branson, Missouri, and we're with our dear friend Ross Naylor-Tatterson. Did I get it right?
You certainly did.
And so I wanted just to have time and let's talk and let you meet Ross. And he and his wife have become pretty good friends and close to Marie and I in the last year and a half or so. And he serves with us on the Vineyard National Missions team. And I won't even pretend to know what you do. I know you're kind of responsible for the Asian partnerships and such, but why don't you tell us what it is you're doing with Vineyard Missions?
Yeah, so you're going to find out fairly quickly here that I'm originally from Australia.
You talk funny. Did anybody ever tell you that?
I have a southern accent. It's the southern hemisphere, so it's a lot further south than you do. But Barbara and I met in Singapore and got married in Hong Kong, and we were with the YWAM, but working with the UN in refugee camps. So she was from Michigan. She's from the US. I'm from Australia. That's how we met. And it was really in YWAM we came in contact with the Vineyard, and I got to meet John Wimber at some events. And little did I know that would change my life and be a part of Vineyard USA. We came here in the year 2000. We immigrated from Australia with 5 children, but my wife and all my 5 children were both US and Australian citizens. Oh. So it's hard. There's a big story here, but I got a green card issued in one day. The day I put in the application was the day the ambassador of Australia was visiting the Perth Western Australian Consulate, American Embassy. I didn't know. We rode up in the elevator together, and he asked me what I was doing, and I said I got a job as an associate pastor in Holland, Michigan, and I need a green card to go. And he said he asked me, you know, how about your wife? I said, she's a US citizen and so are all my 5 children. He said, so you're the breadwinner for 6 US citizens? I said, yes. He said, that's not a marriage of convenience, is it? Not 5 children isn't. And he said, come in here with me. He said, listen, if I put your application on this side of the table, it's going to take 6 to 12 months for you to get a green card. But if I take a pen and sign it like this, he signed it and he said, welcome to America. Oh, so I walked out with the green card. I think that might have been God's confirmation. I was heading in the right direction. You never knew that story.
I hadn't heard that story.
So I was already in a Vineyard church in Australia for about 10 years prior to coming here. And I was on staff. I was a pastor, and I became the associate pastor over here. So I've been in the Vineyard for about 34 years. Because you heard me say about YWAM and being in Asia, I have always had a real missional heart. Mm. And when I came here to the US and learned about just their passion for global missions, of course, I got connected pretty quickly with a guy by the name of Phil Strout and Mark Fields. And I happened to speak Indonesian, and I started pretty early on, probably in 2001, around that time, the Indonesian partnership. And I had contacts in Indonesia, and that's how I got started. But as it's evolved, I relinquished that partnership to other leaders, and I was asked to join the national team as the Asian regional coordinator. And up until the beginning of this year, that was my primary job. But starting at the beginning of this year, I was also asked to lead the Manaka vineyards, the region. Manaka stands for Middle East, North Africa, Central Asia. We just say Manaka because it's too many words otherwise. But we have about 8 or 9 partnerships as well. So I'm coordinating both Asia, which we have about 13 partnerships of churches focusing on Asia, and about 8 or 9 in the Middle East and North Africa and Central Asia. But over all of that too, I joined staff. So I'm on the staff of Vineyard Missions USA. There's only 3 of us, and I am the partnership catalyst for missions. So that's a fancy name.
That's a fancy name. I like that even better than mobilizer. I mean, catalyst is cool.
Yeah.
it's and let's just describe this, because again, most of our people who are watching this they follow Marie and I and some of the things that we do. We might not have clarity on what we even are talking about sometimes. So why don't you describe a partnership? When you say over the partnership, what are you referring to?
Yeah, so that's a really interesting word in mission circles anyway. People use it very differently. So that's a great question, Duke, because the way that we describe what a partnership is and how we use it, our missiology is quite different from a lot of, if you've been around Christian missions, but you'll often go into a local church and they'll have a globe map at the back with pins all over it, and you've got different people working with different agencies. So one little local church might support, quite a few people in different places all over the world. Well, in Vineyard Missions, we sort of turn that a little bit upside down. We're not really having the church dispersed in their mission focus, but we actually try and get local churches to identify where God's leading their church, their local church, to focus on. And once they determine that, we then facilitate them connecting with other Vineyard churches in the US and try and form a partnership of US churches that focus on the same area. And then as we started to do that, we started to realize some of the real big benefits of that. One is, for the receiving country, they might have 5, 6, or up to 10 churches in the US that are in a partnership together. They discuss, for example, that partnership, the goals and objectives of the Indigenous leaders. And then we've got a bigger resource base. So we could send more teams or different types of teams coming out of the local churches. So my experience is we've sent medical teams out of churches that are in a partnership, or we might send, we led a group of social workers that were all trained in trauma counseling. They went to the Philippines after a huge, devastating cyclone that wiped out things. So they went there and trained our Vineyard people there in how to do trauma ministry. So not only is it finances, but it's consistency and its strategy about how local short-term mission trips for us are strategic. They're not just one-offs, but we keep going back to the same place. And we're really finding it's good relationally.
It is relational. I mean, the partnership idea, which on the other side, Marie and I are the national mission mobilizers for about a third of the U.S. and
my region, actually, which is great.
And so those things, what we do is actually what Ross is referring to. We go into the churches or interact with the churches, and try to help them to connect into regions of the world where we already have churches that are partnered to work together and add their resources. And the beauty of it is, my favorite probably is the fact that every church, no matter what size they are, I mean, we've got churches that literally have 50 people and less that are serving in a partnership, that actually are connected, are in the strategic conversations and sending teams into those areas. And so probably my favorite is that any church any size gets to do it. But also what you referred to there with the skill sets. When you need specific skill sets, and in the Vineyard National Missions, again, it's not like maybe the AGs or the Baptist, mission board, where we have this huge mission machine operation that we get to send out of here with some kind of a national direction. It's a lot closer to the ground than that, right? And so we get to have individual churches making those kind of decisions together.
And ordinary people get to participate in global missions. And even if they don't go, the fact that their friends sitting in the pew right beside them or the seat near them, they get to go, and they then get to see, when in the receiving country, they're not just meeting pastors and missions directors, they're meeting electricians, they're meeting housewives, they're meeting entrepreneurs. And it's sort of modeling that whole thing that in God's kingdom, everybody gets to play and participate. The other thing I love about it Most partnerships make a 5 to 10 year commitment to going to the same area. So that's quite a few trips going back and forth, and it's not unusual where possible for some of the Indigenous people to come back and minister in our churches.
That's fun.
And I'll tell you what, there's a huge difference when a disaster hits a place and you know somebody personally in that place that's been devastated by that. I mean, we have no problem raising funds and support because they're not nameless, faceless people. There's someone that, hey, my daughter stayed in their home, or hey, we went over there and we got to cook with them and learn how to cook with them or whatever. And it's just this global family concept. I love that. And one thing that a friend of mine just said, when we go on missions, we want to go with the heart to make friends, not to sort of just get everybody to say the prayer and become a Christian. We want that, but we want to build this friendship. We want them to know that they are loved individually and known individually. I think that's a big part of the ministry of Jesus, right?
Right.
I mean, he didn't just get people to say prayers. He noticed the widow at Nain, and he noticed that she was a widow and she lost her only supporting person, or he noticed the woman at the well, or whatever. We go with that sort of missional heart. We love doing that.
Yeah, and the missiology of the local church as the foundation, and probably the best methodology, if you would, for reaching the lost, reaching a community. A lot of not knocking the things that we do. Everything has its place, and everything is part of the process. But we're trying to avoid the idea of quick hit go to a place and we quick hit it and people get saved, and then we book out and we go back to the U.S.
and tell everybody how many
and tell how
the number.
And again, everything has its place. Everything is feeding into the whole. But in the Vineyard, we truly believe the most sustainable and the best methods for actually reaching the lost, and particularly reaching a nation, is church planting. Leaving a church, a local church with local leadership that is serving their home, and a sustained and long-term relationship. And our relationship with those people is the best way for us to reach the nations. It's more than reaching a lost person. I believe that the Great Commission is about go and baptize nations.
I love that you mentioned our core commitment is church planting, and that's what we really want to major on. However, we are forming strategic partnerships. So if we come across people that really want to work in the Muslim world, we're trying to try and connect them with Frontiers to get really good training. If we came across people that want to translate the Bible, we don't do that really well, but Wycliffe does that well. We're not against agencies, but we want to communicate to our local church that you don't have to go to an agency in order to be useful in missions. That's really a part of what we do, and I love that. I love that my children have been raised global citizens because they're part of the Vineyard Church. I love that. And I would challenge people that are Christians out there, does your church make your children global citizens? Do they feel committed to the world? I'd like to challenge that. How important is it that we get outside of our monocultural perspective, and what damage has happened in history when people focus on their own monoculture? The us and them thing, Jesus came to tear down, didn't he say break down every wall? And I think that's a big deal. So that's why I'm passionate about missions. It's because, my child is valuable, but so's my friend's child in a country that doesn't have 1/10 of the resources I do. Their child's just as valuable. I want my kids to realize that. They do.
I don't remember who I heard. I heard recently somebody who made the statement, I think every Christian should have to go out of the country and meet other Christians.
I actually preach that because Jesus, when he took the boys across the lake to the naked demoniac that was in chains in a graveyard, There are about 4 faux pas from a Jewish point of view. First of all, you're not to look on someone else's nakedness. Number 2, you shouldn't be in a place of death. Number 3, you shouldn't be in a Gentile village that's got pig farms close enough. You shouldn't be in any close proximity to that. That was a mind-blowing mission trip for that guys. I'll guarantee you that rocked their world. Just as much as Jesus, the rabbi, going right through Samaria and meeting the Samaritan woman and actually talking to her about spiritual things. I mean, Jesus was taking these guys out of their cultural comfort zone. Why? Because God was bigger. I heard someone once say, the Jewish people, you know, in the time of Jesus, they prayed to a Jewish God, they expected a Jewish Messiah, and they wanted a Jewish church. And Jesus came to blow that apart and say, it's a global God, it's a global Messiah, it's a global church. But I think we live in a place where it could be, I'll use my own country, an Australian Messiah, an Australian God and an Australian church. That is not the Church of Jesus Christ. That's a construct of us and them. Jesus came to break that.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Well, we've got background music there, but great talking to you guys.
I appreciate it, man. And quickly, what are we doing here? Why are we in Branson?
Yeah, Convoy of Hope. It just opened its global headquarters. Wasn't that fantastic?
Oh, my goodness.
$64 million that was built and established without taking any money out of the programs that Convoy of Hope's known for, like emergency relief, feeding centers. They didn't back down at all. They raised this $64 million out during the COVID time, and they are debt-free. And we came for the grand opening, and it was like the governor of Missouri spoke. The one of the, I guess, the biggest donors spoke. The founder, Hal Donaldson, spoke. And honestly, it was all really to the glory of God.
Yes.
And every one of them pointed in one single direction and said, there is only one hope, and it's Jesus. I loved it. I loved that evangel choir that sang.
Yeah, that was
awesome.
It was
what an honor.
Spectacular. The facility's spectacular, and the organization. You know, my respect for Convoy of Hope only went up.
Oh,
you know,
totally.
I already thought they were one of the best things I'd ever seen of its nature, and it just, you know, my respect just skyrocketed this week with these people, seeing them up close and meeting them. And
they feed 1 million children every day. This is not just here in the US, but they do it here and around the world. They empower women and girls. They do that empowerment of, you know, giving them opportunities for entrepreneurship. They also work with farmers. And so they have, so all this facility had like an agricultural department where they had experimental gardens, and they're trying to work out what grows, and they're training people how to plant school gardens in some of these countries where they can grow their own food. So, you know, that whole thing, they're not just giving fish, they're teaching how to fish as well. I love that. So yeah, I agree. And the people themselves, what wonderful people.
Fantastic.
Young, old, multicultural. I mean, how many nations were there? They brought in their national directors, and it looked to me like 40 or 50 people from different countries, some of them in their national dress for at the celebration. It was awesome. And then we saw famous celebrities. Dino, who else?
Dino.
And some of the NBA players, I think, were there. And
there were names there that many people would recognize for sure.
Yeah.
I think somebody said they met the owner of the Harlem Globetrotters.
Yeah.
I went like, well, that's cool.
That is cool.
They said I was sitting by a guy and he introduced himself and he's the owner. So that's pretty neat. Awesome, man. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's lovely.
And thank you for what you're doing.
Lovely to talk to your friends too.
Yeah. See y'all.